looking in a very good spot over in Division A, being the only newcomer to be in Division A. But now, Gia, this is the match of the day for me here. We have
Mm.
Surrender at the top of Division A, doing his stuff, doing his thing, bringing standard decks, playing them very well, and having a lot of success with them. Whereas che0nsu on the other side, he's bringing very, very weird decks, and we can only hope is going to be playing them very well as well.
Yep, I do hope so, because che0nsu's strategy is very much hard targeting Bomb Warrior, which Surrender has not brought. And so che0nsu's, what is this, quadruple sticky finger lineup, maybe even more. No, sorry. There are 8 copies of Cobalt Sticky Finger in his lineup all in all. They barely have any targets to land on. I say barely and not at all, because Surrender does at least have Weapon Rogue.
Yes, this is where things get interesting, because obviously this is primarily the target warrior strategy, as you were saying, and it had a reasonable amount of success at Masters Tour Montreal, which is where che0nsu clearly got his inspiration here. We saw the Japanese approach, which is what che0nsu has gone for here, where it was Aojiru, Lojom, and a couple of others that also went for the strategy. I think Sombre as well, going for the full anti-warrior tech with this particular build. And then on the other side, there was ETC and Monsanto with a slightly different take, but still for the most part going with target warrior as their strategy. Surrender doesn't have it, and even though he has Weapon Rogue, which is obviously very dependent on weapons, in our experience, Weapon Rogue felt significantly more able to get the win, even against this lineup that has so much weapon destruction.
It's true, because Weapon Rogue does have other ways to generate damage with the more board-centric builds that have been coming out of the woodwork lately. Surrenders in particular also rocking the Infiltrator Lillian, but maybe the one of Steel Dancer a little bit in these matchups. Also have to shout out to Trahisan, I hope I'm saying that right, who did talk to Lorinda about this lineup from che0nsu, and just taking credit where credit is due, I suppose, because it's not che0nsu who invented this. This is
Right.
120 cards what the Japanese casters slash competitors were bringing to MT Montreal, and I do believe Aojiru made it to one of the later days, so it
Yeah.
does have quite a lot of potential when your opponent is not preparing for it. Although Surrender has had a couple days to prep against this lineup, I feel like it's gonna have, much less of a shot here.
Right. I mean, I think we were seeing with the players who brought it, like you said, Trahison messaging Lorinda, me, as in Trahison, Aojiru, and Oyatsu went 7-2, 6-3, 6-3 over the weekend at Masters Tour Montreal. So clearly, the archetype, even though it didn't go all the way, had a very positive win percentage at the start, and ended up with a very strong idea. And I think opening the player's perception of how you can approach a conquest metagame, because it doesn't just have to be the standard decks, as che0nsu is showing here. He hasn't found what he wanted to, though, and this is where things get interesting. Banning away the Druid, which I guess makes sense. The Malagos Druid, with a pretty powerful combo win condition, should be able to take down all of these very slow anti-aggro, anti-weapon decks that che0nsu has. And then he's going to have to take down Demon Hunter, Mage, and Rogue. And if you had to kind of order the decks that che0nsu is most afraid to see here, how would you stack up Surrender's decks that he's got left?
I would say Mage most frightening, because they can just switch to a slower game plan and
Mm,
just stack up a lot of additional value that these control decks can't account for. And between the Rogue and Demon Hunter, I actually think that the Rogue is scarier because of
okay.
the speed at which they can put out minion threats. The Secret Passage in particular can take advantage of the 1 or 2 turns where the Shaman has not hit the removal or the
Yeah.
Druid has not hit the removal. The Soul Demon Hunter has actually very finite amount of damage that they can put out. It is
Mm,
a whole lot throughout the course of the game, but you can just out heal this deck, which was one of the first philosophies of how to play against these slower Demon Hunters that was in practice in the previous meta. I'm not entirely sure though if che0nsu has a chance at all, looking at the lineup as a whole, because he has built a conquest lineup to hard target a deck. Which it's been such a long time that we've seen this, and I'm so surprised to see a strategy like this in APAC rather than from someone like Frozen for the first time in GM.
yeah, I mean, this is, I think, a world first as well, not only with this weird lineup, But also, it's the first time any player outside of Europe GM will be saying, boy, I wish I was in Europe Grandmasters here, because I believe Europe this week is at a 100% bring rate in terms of Bomb Warrior, with APAC being only at 56% in terms of Bomb Warrior being brought, so just over the halfway mark, which does represent itself fairly well here for che0nsu. I think he got Tyler, who has got the Bomb Warrior, and he got Surrender, who does not have the Bomb Warrior. I will say, though, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Surrender was one of the players who was omitting Bomb Warrior in previous weeks. It definitely didn't feel like he was super all in on that game plan. And so, I don't know, maybe che0nsu could have got a read. Either way, as we keep saying, it didn't work out for him here, and he's got an uphill climb.
And it does look like the players
You
are
have
starting
much to
off
answer
with
for.
che0nsu on the quest Fear of Sapiens double sticky finger double ooze
Right.
druid, which also features Wormrest Purifier and Archivist Elysiana.
So there's a little bit more to be worried about against Demon Hunter than there is against Warrior, which is why I was going to lead up to, I think you probably don't keep the sticky finger, because not only are there the weapons that you're afraid of, there's also just development, there's tempo in the early game that you really have to try and find an answer for.
Yep. The saving grace, I suppose, for che0nsu is the time that Demon Hunter starts putting out the big threats is around turn 5 with the Lapidaries and Glaive-bound Adepts, which by that point, Quest should be active, and then you have Oasis Surgers to counter. The threats leading up to that are a lot less scary. Mana Theater, Panthera, and Wand Makers just chipping away. The particular nuance with Surrender's deck is that he has double Battle Fiend in here, which is probably the scariest thing for che0nsu in the early game.
I will say, che0nsu, you are a coin quest gamer and not a quest coin gamer. You absolute heathen. I can't even look at him anymore. But outside of that one misplay aside, it's looking okay in the start for che0nsu. He's got development in the form of a Saladris or Ooze, which, you don't hate to throw down. And the Fear of Sapiens, as I was saying, is likely to find him those cards that he can use to win the early game, sorry.
I think you do probably just take the Crystal Power here. There's the argument that you want to make sure you have Oasis Surger on 5, because he did go for Quest and Coin, which means you're lining up for big payoff on the 5 mana turn. And so you can just take every possible chance to hit the Surger. But I feel like Crystal Power is, going to be playable for the rest of the game and is a pretty flexible card that I would settle for it here.
There's also the argument of just... Well, there's a few things to consider here. There's obviously just skip the quest completion on this turn and just Crystal Power down the minion, which you could consider, of course. There's also the fact he has Groundskeeper, so you really do want to find an expensive spell, because that life heal would be a pretty big deal.
Time waits for no one.
It's really tough.
Man, I don't play decks like this. This type of decision. I just take what's off the top of my deck and believe in it. In the end, che0nsu going for what I expected of just taking the Crystal Power here. What I didn't expect is the tempo of Steladris rather than the Ooze. This Druid deck is very redundant with the weapon removal it runs, but for the time being, he does just have the one Ooze, so I suppose that makes sense.
Does make sense. You're not super happy about it, because Crystal Power with Steladris is a really nice combo against Demon Hunter.
And as I was playing this Druid deck, I found that you have a lot of redundant heal effects that you can run into the trap of just playing them out, because, oh, I have another Groundskeeper in my deck, I have another Crystal Power, but suddenly, if you're playing them all out and your opponent, removes them with their Blade Dance, etc., and you don't hit all of that healing in time, you can lose in the window where you miss one turn of healing. So you can't be, too willy-nilly with how you close out all of these healing effects.
I think you can be fairly liberal, however, with your weapon destruction effects. The Ooze here, even if it doesn't, takes out the Warblades and then they equip Marrow Slicer, you're really not all too sad. You can throw down the Groundskeeper to get in the way on the following turns.
I'm looking heavily at New Fate here because of the same reasons we mentioned last turn, but now he only has one more turn before he can, get down Oasis Surger on curve with quest completion.
It's close. Like, even this turn, do you ever consider going Ghidra Crystal Power? Like, you heal for 5, or I guess you it's pretty rough. It's not very clean, is it?
Yeah. I don't think he has to
Okay.
heal in the near future. I'm interested in trying to hit Oasis Surger, trying to hit even Nourish for eventual activation with Quest and also activation on the Groundskeeper. Wrath not the greatest here since he can't quite fit it in alongside the Ooze if he wants another tick on quest completion, and he is just gonna go for it because it makes some of the top deck a lot more powerful.
Yeah, also just Wrath next turn. Like you said, his health isn't the biggest concern right now. It's just making sure he doesn't lose to the development that Surrender throws down.
Speaking of development, can go for double minions here, but obviously Surrender will be very scared of Oasis Surger.
That's the thing, right? You're afraid of these development cards, be it Oasis Surge or I suppose Starfall to clear off the board as well. But when are those not good? The time when they're least likely to have it is always now.
Yep. There's... You know, that makes me think you want to get down che0nsu ASAP, but the question is whether you want to play Battle Fiend alongside it and trade off the 2-3, or just use Twin Slice. I'm thinking it's the latter option.
Yeah.
There's just no good usage of mana here that involves playing Battle Fiend.
I'm to the same conclusion. You don't want to play che0n here. You want to have it to get through whatever it may be in the late game, Lucent Bark or the Groundskeepers, but you take what you can get.
Oh,
That's
I'm
a
taking
biggie.
a Nourish for a next turn play.
Absolutely.
And this turn can just be Wrath on the che0n and go from whatever you get off the top.
I like it a lot.
If he's starting with Crystal Power, I'd have to assume it's going to be Groundskeeper over the Wrath here, which has its merit. It's mana spent more efficiently. You get the 4-5 on board, and also you can go Nourish Wrath on the next turn. Overall, I like it.
That's true. That's true, yeah.
Skull active for Surrender.
I can't get enough of Surrender's expression. Just the rapid blinking as he's trying to comprehend what on earth is going on is just so extremely relatable right now.
Okay, I did say Skull, but there is a clean way to get rid of the Groundskeeper with the Eldraki Second Slice Hero Power, which also fits in Battle Fiend with the mana.
And I guess if you were ever afraid of weapon removal, like if you go for that play, it's a very poor sticky finger. There's still a lot of damage on the board that they would have to be tanking if they did go for the weapon destruction.
It's true. And I think he would have a read that if there were Oasis Surger on that turn from che0nsu, it would be a stronger play than what che0nsu went for of D10 healing but leaving up a board.
Time grows short.
I'm sold. 3 cards on the right, playing those. Now we've seen some versions of Demon Hunter that are running Altruist. Surrender's deck is not one of them, so Skull of Gul'dan probably a lot less threatening for che0nsu to see later on.
You probably don't want that quite yet. Oh.
Agreed.
Oh, alright, now we're talking.
Man, this brings me back to late 2019.
What a simple time it was.
A full year ago, this was the meta.
I mean, kind of. Playing Nourish was the meta in Quest Druid. Archivist Elysiana in Druid, maybe not quite so much.
Yeah. I mean, every time I see Quest Druid doing these things with Nourish and Wrath, cheating so much mana, it makes me wonder how it ever fell out of the meta.
Yeah, and
His hand is just insane from here on out. Oasis Surger, Groundskeeper.
I mean, it's good. Like, this is obviously powerful in cheating out the mana that he gets to go for here. But then, you know, you compare it against Sorcerer's Apprentice cheating 15 mana in a single turn, and it starts to put it back into perspective a little bit.
That's true. Against this particular matchup, though, where the minion damage is very limited from the Demon Hunter, and a lot of it comes from weapons, you run the removal, you run the healing, it feels very easily possible for Druid to outlast.
Steel Beetle, a very nice card in this matchup. You definitely do not want to substitute that just for a River Acropolis. You'll see a sharp downtick in your win percentage, I think.
First instinct is to play out the 5-drop and 4-drop, take full control of the board, and heal up to a nice 21. But that is, I guess, semi-vulnerable to Shatter Shard Mystic. And the one thing that che0nsu has to be afraid of... Oh, I was going to say is the Magtheridon, but Surrender's not running that.
Yeah, you just have free reign to go as you wish on this turn. No real big threats that you need to be afraid of. So I think any way that you're clearing the board is a good deal here for che0nsu. Like, with this Fatigue deck, one thing you do have to consider is using Oasis Surges purely as removal cards, because you don't want to give your opponent good options with their Blade Dances. You kind of want to play as reactive as possible, I think, with this deck. Man, Steel Beetle is a nutty card.
Definitely better than River Crocs. But
Yeah.
Sottle couldn't be bothered to finish. What was it? Galakrond's Awakening?
Yeah.
Okay. Marrow Slicer is definitely happening this turn, but you have a lot of other mana to account for, so you're starting with the Skull.
Yeah, Skull First is really nice just because you have no Soul Fragments in your deck, so you're guaranteed to get the full discount here.
Yeah. Big deal.
And then...
It's unfortunate that he can't both Marrow Slicer and Glavebound with the amount of mana remaining.
True. I mean, are we not just going Shard Shatter here? I think clearing off some of the board and getting something in play feels pretty clean to me.
And even the Ooze, why not?
Yeah.
Time grows short.
Okay. So the reasoning for holding on to Shard Shatter is not something I'm immediately thinking of, but maybe Surrender just didn't want to give up his 2-3 that easily, where he does still end up with a net board advantage.
Yes, yeah, I mean, it's kind of weaker right now because there's still something on the other side of the board, but maybe he's thinking it's nice to take out Oasis Surges, because that's very possibly the play you expect on the backswing from che0nsu here, is just Oasis Surges, swing, something else, and then pass, and you can clear up with the Shard Shatter.
So this looks like a very timely Sticky Finger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so surprised how long che0nsu has been holding onto these Oasis Surgers and been willing to leave up minions.
I mean,
he can still clear the 2-3 with the swing, though.
It's what I was talking about, right? He wants to save these for when they're necessary as the best removal spells, because he knows that Blade Dance, Shard Shatter, cards like that are going to be in hand. So save it for the Lapidaries, save it for the Glavebound Adepts. I think it's smart, honestly.
Very fair. Outside of the Oasis, he does just have the 1 Starfall, which isn't that clean.
Whoa, speaking of.
Okay, this definitely smells like a Blade Dance turn for Surrender. So he goes second, Marrow Slicer, he can Chaos Strike.
Demons.
If he goes Marrow Slicer Hero Power, he can just go double Glavebound, right? Oh no, then you have to omit the Chaos Strike. The Blade Dance, sorry. Right, I'm on board with this.
There's actually a line where you don't Chaos Strike and just push the Hero Power, which allows you to play the expensive Glavebound and save the cheap one in hand, assuming Blade Dance is going to be the play.
Well, you don't
But
have mana for Blade Dance then, right? Oh, if you'd saved the Chaos Strike originally, sorry.
Yeah, and just go hero power. But this line does allow Surrender to start the cycle immediately, play out an additional minion, and keep going from there. I think the goal for Surrender is just to make sure he puts down at least one of either Glavebound Adept and Soul Shard Lapidary for the next couple turns, just one after the other. So if you do force out an Oasis Surger, you're not committing both of them into dying immediately.
Well, Hidden Oasis is very nice, but I think you're probably looking at a more removal-heavy line here. It's just how afraid of dying you are, because there's 4 damage on the other side, so it probably has to just be Oasis Surger, Healing Touch, and Rising Winds on this turn, I think.
So we can start with the Rising.
If he gets
and
Wrath...
I think this is, looking back at Surrender's turn, it's very smart that he decided to not play both Glavebounds on the same turn, because he kind of wants to catch the Oasis Surgers and the Blade Dances.
Waits for no one.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You always want to have at least one thing that's unanswerable on the other side, as much as possible. Whoa!
So with this, it's gonna be leave up the
Wow!
Very interesting.
I guess... Is Oasis Surger for Militia then? But he has double Starfall for that, right? He can clear that off.
I'm unsure, but this does give Surrender a clean second Blade Dance with Chaos Strike if he wants.
Super powerful here. You can get a lot of damage through now.
But he has been making sure to not commit both Glavebounds the same turn to play around Oasis Surger. Is this the turn where he says, I'm done playing around it, I'm going all in?
8 cards left in deck, 2 have been pushed to the bottom, so it's really only like 6 cards that the Oasis Surgers could be in. I'd be hesitant to say that you can... you have to expect Oasis Surger by this point, I think.
For sure.
Time grows short.
I was expecting it like 7 turns ago.
True. Alright.
Okay. Well, Surrender is going for the big push now. No big surprise here, but this is finally the board state that I feel che0nsu will deem worthy of a Surger to remove. But
you have to here. It's just so clean. You have the Oasis Surger, you clear them both up, and then if Militia does come down, you have the plan. Double Starfall clears that up.
it's just annoying that he can't get minion development alongside this, because I assume he's going to go Healing Touch with the Surgers here.
Right.
And the Hidden Oasis is a card which has been highly problematic in the deck because it almost never pairs with anything else you do in a turn, even when you hit mana.
Yeah, exactly. You need like Wrath or something, or I guess Groundskeeper, both of which have gone down now, to work with it.
Next wave of healing for che0nsu there. Surrender, not able to close out the game with the amount of damage left, but he has a draw for Militia. Not it.
That's still a big threat. There's a lot of damage coming through now. But you're right. It's not the card you want.
I mean, it's a 5/5 on board. You take those.
You do. What? Yeah. I mean, I think you play that. The question for me is just whether or not Spirit Jailer's coming down. Like, it's an extra body on board, but it also means that you're potentially drawing more Soul Fragments before Militia. You could just save that and play it on the same turn for maximum development.
True. There's even, like, you could go Shatter Shard just to replace your 2/3 with a 3/2.
I guess?
Maximum damage on board?
Yeah. Right. The expected line.
We were getting really deep down the rabbit hole there.
And now things get interesting, because obviously this is a reasonable Starfall on this turn to just clear up 5 damage, but che0nsu needs the heal, and most importantly again, Militia is the roadblock at the moment. That's the hump that he has to get over to take the win.
And this now is, I'd have to imagine the Shatter Shard turn. It's just super awkward how the taunt lines up with everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because ideally you would want to push the small minions to the face, but the only way to do that is either by investing Twin Slice, which should normally go face, or Soul Shear plus Shatter Shard, which kills off the 2 minions.
Wow, this is maximum damage being saved for face here. I was looking very heavily at the Twin Slice there, but Surrender saying, let's convert this board into more damage and save the Twin Slice while we're at it.
Fashionably late is the Lucent Bark after che0nsu's healed for what feels like 30 HP throughout this whole game.
Whoa.
Maybe even more.
He's playing the Starfall though. That is a huge deal at this point in the game. Huge deal.
Big, but che0nsu needed to do it to survive.
Could have just gone Lucent Bark, right? It wasn't the only play that keeps him alive there.
It wasn't. Oh man,
now,
Surrender is running very dry on damage after this last push, but che0nsu is running dry on healing.
Oh man, it's going to be so close, because if the Militia doesn't come soon, there's just going to be no Soul Fragments in the deck. Even if Soul Shear is saved right for the end,
Yep.
it's only going to get 2. Is that even game-winning at that point? Maybe he doesn't need it, he just wins on damage.
Yeah, he has the 1/1 maker remaining to try and hit another Twin Slice, or more importantly, now that there's a ton in the way, consume magic. That Wrath draw for che0nsu was enormous, so he could do something alongside Lucent Bark.
There's the one
Gonna
maker.
be consume magic! No, that's the
Yikes.
worst one!
That's not what you want.
Second worst to philosophy, I suppose.
Right, yeah.
Just not there. The damage is just not there.
Oh, it's so close.
4 soul fragments in the deck. The other 3 cards are Militia, Shatter Shard Mystic, and Battle Fiend. Only Militia is a significant draw right now.
Right, so you set up for that, because Militia has to be in the next couple of cards, I think, for Surrender to have a chance here, so you play as if it is.
But as for che0nsu, he's out of healing in the deck as well. His last 2 cards are Speaker Gidra and Wormrest Purifier, so could be looking at Elysiana in the near future to try and close out the game. Or at least to not compete.
Yeah, or more importantly, just tempo, trying to close out the game as soon as possible. Even Shard Shatter off the top. I mean, it's most of a clear board. He can kill off the Lucent Bark here, right?
He can. But is that a way to win? It's so tough to say. Because you can't estimate how many soul fragments you get until you get Militia. Okay, from Surrender's perspective, he knows there's another Starfall in the deck, or in che0nsu's hand by this point, which on its own does not deal with all of the 3/3s. So you can somewhat reasonably expect that 3/3s sticking for a turn equals a Twin Slice use. So I don't mind using Twin Slice on a minion here, just to stay alive.
Yeah, the question for me is just, like, I do want to kill the Lucent Bark here. It's just whether or not you want to kill the Oasis Surger with Soul Shear as well, because it's less damage right now. You stick a 3/2 on board, but it comes at the expense of guaranteed extra soul fragments for Militia.
I have
So
no
complicated.
idea. It's incredibly complicated. I think Surrender is all in now on the game plan of trying to stick the Militia board if the Militia comes soon enough off the top. He's holding on to this Soul Shear for Militia. Okay. Wolf Rider, let's go.
Wolf Rider, yep, that's removal. We take that.
Steladris, hello?
Steladris? Or Garden Gnome? I guess you're probably going to play the spell. Probably just Steladris.
Guard is like a mini Magtheridon, which you used to run. No, never mind. It's got to be Steladris, right? If he just holds on to the Rising Winds, that's immediate cycle with Steladris.
Yeah, that's true.
Double cycle. Right?
I mean, it's super low cost, which is kind of awkward. Okay, Ogre.
Can't activate Panthera.
That's funny.
Ogre man. Alar, insane.
Yep. Probably a lot overdoing. Blatant decoy! Just get the militia out of hand. The nuts.
Imagine Surrender not immediately ripping it when he draws it. Imagine.
Oh,
that's it!
Oh,
that's
that's
it!
the draw!
He actually hit
That's
it! Off
the
the
draw!
top.
What is this, 5 soul fragments as well?
Yes. Last card in deck is Battle
Oh, that might just be it!
Yeah, the Starfall just doesn't do enough here. With Ghidra, how many can he deal with?
Ghidra, Starfall, he can obviously draw a card as well first, but he is just dead, exactly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, at most he can deal with 2 of the 3/3s, which leaves 6 on board for Surrender plus hero power. That's GG. There's no taunts or healing effect from the Elysiana in the deck. But he can Worm Rest to transform the neutral cards in his deck to look for healing?
I wonder.
I mean, that's the only line, right? He's just dead on
Yeah.
board otherwise.
Yup. I can't believe it's come down to this, but che0nsu hardly has any time left. He has to go for it. The Starfall is just not enough.
Gotta go. He's just got to go. He could play
It's a
Ghidra
desperation
first,
play.
is the thinking.
Yeah.
I can see.
That is not one of the neutral cards. Surrender gets there in the end. I can't believe this. Surrender is ecstatic.
Oh my god, that was such a surrender win. How do you possibly wrestle that one back? And again, it comes down to, for the entire game, clearly che0nsu had the militia in mind. That's the big development onto the board that you need to have an answer for. He was holding onto the Starfalls for as long as he could, but he just had to throw it down in his estimation. He did not have to play it to survive on board. It was probably still the best play because going for the Lucent Buck probably just left him dead over a couple of turns. But man, was that a tough game to end up with there. And even at the end for Surrender, it had to be exactly militia. If it was a soul fragment first, che0nsu would have been able to survive.
Yeah. It was exactly still on board. If Surrender drew 1 single soul fragment, it would have been down to 4 HP that Surrender was threatening. And then che0nsu just had it all the time in the world to try and come back on the board. And man, that was so sick, I have to say. And, between this game and me not being able to deal the 1 last damage to Sottle on Tempo Mage using this deck last night, I feel like this Druid, if you know it well enough, you can abuse the amount of things that it can do every single turn.
For sure. It's a deck with one purpose in mind. Everything apart from Bomb Warrior, it's honestly just trying to piece together some kind of a ragtag win condition because it's not meant for those matchups at all. But it's a big loss there for che0nsu. He really needed, I think, to get the Druid past and very possibly try and target the Demon Hunter. That was, I think, probably his best chance of trying to lock out one of the decks from Surrender, which means when we come back from this break, we are going to see if che0nsu can do the unthinkable and wrestle this one back against 2-0, the god of Apex Surrender. We'll see if he can do it after this.
If もし自分のハースストーンのプレイに、スローガンをつけるとしたら、
아무래도 팔기 위해서라면은 장점을 더 부각을 해야 되니까 장점을 말씀드리면은
ハースストーンのスローガンとしては自分が楽しく勝つことをスローガンとしていきたいと思います。ちょっと歌はわからないです。楽しさ第一かな。
잘합니다.
ハーストーンのスローガンを考えるなら運が良ければ上手い人にも勝てる。
My slogan will be che0nsu is the best. Okay?
제 하스스톤 슬로건 방식은 쉽고 빠르게 라고 하고 싶어요.
如果我的炉石的打法当成一个产品来卖哦，我觉得还是不要，我觉得我会破产。
We are done with our first match of Game 3 here. I think there's a reasonable chance that it ends up being longer than all 4 of the other matches put together here in APAC, with the pace of play that our other matches have been going through. But I do think it will be one you do not want to miss. It is once again che0nsu up against che0nsu. And just as a briefer, che0nsu is going with the lineup that was fairly popular over Masters Tour Montreal Online this past weekend when we took a break from Grandmasters, where you bring these 4 super slow, super control decks that run 2 oozes and 2 kobold sticky fingers in every single deck, basically purely to target the bomb warrior. And the headline here, of course, is che0nsu does not have bomb warrior, so che0nsu is trying to wrestle together any kind of a win condition. And although he was so close against the Demon Hunter from che0nsu, which was the main thing I think he was trying to target, che0nsu did end up taking a well-deserved win. And now it is looking very rough for che0nsu, as he is going to be lining up the Shaman as another one of these very silly control decks.
Man, silly is one way to put it. The Druid I at least managed to get some wins with when we were testing.
Yeah.
But this Shaman, man, even if it feels like I got off to the perfect opener, I hit the healing, at some point you just run short of card draw, and the rogue can just abuse that for time and time again, because if they hit the secret passage, they can refill turn after turn. And if you miss one wave of AoE, you can die in the blink of an eye. So for che0nsu here, I think we're looking at early schemes and healing in a perfect balance for him to be able to take the win.
I mean, if Control Shaman is generally coined as Peanut Shaman by Viper, I'm going to call this Raisin Shaman, because it's like in a bag of nuts and raisins, and it's always like 90% raisins, and you hate it, and you just wish they had some more cashews or peanuts or anything. This deck is the raisins in that package. I'm just saying it.
Yeah, I hate this deck so much that I'm actually going to support this terrible analogy.
I think it made perfect sense. I refuse to acquiesce on that one. But it's not looking...
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
After you guys left the practice group last night and I said I need to get a couple more games in with the Shaman, and then I was a punching bag and Sottle was just very easily beating me with every single deck, I just exclaimed, "This is torture," because I couldn't do anything proactive with this deck whatsoever.
Yeah, I played Bomb Warrior against you playing che0nsu's lineup for like 4 hours yesterday. We can't talk about torture, alright?
Okay, that's
Although, to be fair, I had something like a 40% win rate against you because we only played like 5 games over that period.
not bad. Okay. Decision to be made is, do you use Evolving Missiles to just take less damage on board? It is very reasonable, also denies in most cases the possibility of Greyheart Sage being active this turn.
Yeah, Greyheart's the big one here. It's why you're even holding on to the missiles, I think, at the start.
Opener for Surrender has been very bad though. I can say that the way Shaman wins this matchup is if the rogue is too trigger happy with their weapon charges and don't support it with any minions on board. Because if you just go Hook Scimitar face twice, Self-Sharpening Sword all to the face, that's a point when the healing can actually just offset the value that the rogue can have.
So when you're talking about being too trigger happy here, does that mean you don't want to get down the Hook Scimitar on this turn?
I mean, the alternative is going Secret Passage and a Dream, which I feel is probably even worse because you want to save that for more value, like ideally playing 3, if not all 4 of the cards you got off of it in the late game. So he does kind of have to go for it, and he does have to swing because che0nsu has the quad weapon removal. But still, it's not very good in the face of this Crown Keeper.
Diligent Note Taker is one of the cards I was most excited for coming out of Scholarman's Academy, with players thinking like, you go Diligent Note Taker, Lightning Bloom game and a billion mana on a turn. And while it hasn't come into fruition all too much, it looks fairly powerful here, right? You can just go Note Taker plus Witch's Brew that gets you some heal, some development, and another one back in hand.
Absolutely. This is one of the ways to cheat out an additional Witch's Brew, which can be any amount of healing towards the late game.
Okay, that's something to spend your mana on for the moment.
Does look like Surrender is going to start digging with the passage though, looking for Greyheart Sage, Cutting Class, Self-Sharpening Sword. I feel like even Triple S is not even that good here. He wants more card draw.
That's a big one, though. You're very, very happy to get the Greyheart Sage and the Dread Corsair as well. I mean, the point I was leading up to was that with this deck, I'm very sad to go with Secret Passage before turn 6 most of the time, because on that, you obviously have Jandis and Krastenov as the big outcomes to get. But I guess with, like you said, there were specifically a few very good 3-cost cards, so it's probably just correct here to go for this for Surrender.
He just didn't have that good of a development otherwise. The only question I think here was whether he wanted to keep his Worgen Stealth, because he will retain the other Greyheart Sage in hand for the next turn.
But he has
he does have in the original hand the Sneaky Delinquent.
Let's get that damage in while we can here for Surrender.
Obviously, Surrender's scared of Scheme, but it's always going to be good and even better the longer you wait to play around it. So I like that Surrender is committing onto the board, and sometimes the Shaman doesn't hit the Scheme.
Sometimes they don't. They have to make do with Torrent. Still obviously a very powerful card, but massively overkill here on the 3-3. Just buying himself time though here is che0nsu. He's got this Sticky Finger, which Surrender obviously has to be aware of. Because that, for me, really felt like the sweet spot that you're hitting with Rogue. You want to go for the Self-Sharpening Sword when you have board, when they have to make the choice between removal or weapon destruction. And this board at the moment is, I think, big enough to make that decision. Like, just Self-Sharpening Sword Eviscerate is reasonably powerful on this turn.
Yeah, that's where I ended up as well, because of that argument you made about sword plus board is the way to go. So actually, you should be playing warrior, and you just play sword and board. Yeah, this is also crucial that you save your board going into turn 6, because it's one before Earthquake, which is another breakpoint you need to be aware of, because at 5 it's Scheme, at 6 it's a mishmash combination from the Shaman, at 7 it's Earthquake, at 8 it's Tidal Wave. absolutely no reason to deal with the healing totem, except maybe Tidal Wave. But it seems so far off that you
Right.
want to invest 2 damage now to potentially deny 3 healing in the later turn.
Agreed. You can deal with that when you come to it. Yep, you didn't want to see that. But you do get the 4 damage to face. This is what I was talking about. The sword and board and the card draw won't stop coming for the moment, at least, with Delinquent Greyheart Sage. This is still very much winnable for Surrender.
A cruel fate awaits you in the ashes.
It's winnable, but this is one of the spots where Shaman has actually put together a threat on board
Yeah.
and has the healing and AoE to support it.
And so in that case, do you just not go for Earthquake here? Are you far ahead enough on board that you don't have to?
So then it would be Witch's Brew to heal 12 here. I have to admit, I probably would have ripped the Earthquake here. That's maybe a reason why I've been losing with this deck so much, because obviously there are still bigger threats in Surrender's deck. The Steel Dancer, Jandis, and even Lillian to an extent.
Yeah, I like this from che0nsu. I think the more minions he has, obviously, the more he's healing for next turn with Tidal Wave. And like you said, if it is that big turn with Jandis or Steel Dancer or whatever, then he still has the Earthquake. He can just adapt on the following turn.
The more stuff gets left up on either side, the more che0nsu can benefit from this Tidal Wave. He's in a great spot here, and Surrender, having now lost Hook Scimitar and the 1/SSS, has Deadly Poison and Double Cutting Class and Steel Dancer, all significantly lessened in power level.
I mean, this is true, but this is where the weakness of the Shaman really comes obvious, right? It has a clear this turn. It has a clear next turn. It can sweep the board no matter what Surrender does. But, okay, that sucks. But it doesn't pressure. The Rogue has all the time in the world to draw through its deck with Cutting Class to just keep finding any kind of a threat. che0nsu has to completely fatigue the Rogue before this is over.
That's true. The only proactive thing the Shaman can do is with Fist of Raden and sometimes with Instructor Fireheart. Otherwise,
Right.
the only minions are playing are Walking Fountains. Like as good a Tidal Wave as any. It's a bit awkward that he would have to sink in the last charge of SSS onto the Steel
Right.
Dancer though.
So what do you heal for? 15 and then you swing? Or you swing first and heal 12? So slightly better to swing first if you were going to, right?
Yeah.
Or of course it's just Earthquake, which is something to consider as well.
If you do go Earthquake and they play Jandis, in most situations they end up with one of the 5 drops still left after you go for Tidal Wave. So the reason to hold Earthquake is for Jandis in particular, which is likely to deal with all of the three.
Yeah, I like it. Health is not really che0nsu's concern right now. He's got ways to outlast every single damage effect that Surrender goes for. It's just about making sure he has answers to boards.
I definitely like the Ooze as well. It puts him ahead on board and gets rid of that little buffed up dagger.
Okay, Dagger, Toxin Blade, 3 mana left over, and then Cutting Class, Delinquent.
Something I whipped up.
Probably Delinquent.
I was expecting Delinquent as well. But if Surrender was concerned about like the last Ooze coming down this turn, it kind of makes sense. I mean, on the next turn, kind of makes sense that he wants to get in the card draw immediately. Because the sooner he hits Jandis, the better chance he has.
That's true. It's Jandis and it's Sword, right? Those are the 2 cards he cares about right now.
The fact that Surrender only runs 1 Steel Dancer is a big deal as well.
And this is it, right? It's for che0nsu here. He's got removal, but Surrender just keeps going. He's just not dying because there's no threat whatsoever. che0nsu needs to hit, I guess Walking Fountain is the biggest threat.
He is purely playing off top deck right now. Because this next board is probably enough to warrant it this way.
Probably, yes. 9 damage is a lot.
Whoa! Everything's stealth! That's hilarious. It really is.
Okay, I mean, I guess that's probably going to be fairly good against Gandis at least.
Yes.
But that is hilarious.
Oh, that's a non-stealth minion. Is Surrender gonna fall for it?
Oh, does he make the read? I mean, you could put it in the middle, right? And then it only kills one of them.
Or you can just dagger and say, can't target either of these.
Could also do that. Oh, it's such a strong read, right? Because it would have to have come in the last couple of cards, or he wouldn't have.
True.
He would have just played it out. I mean, you could definitely make the argument that it's just better to play Dagger anyway, because you need to squeeze out all the damage, but I think you probably end up going Dread Corsair here, just because you want to get the damage in before they draw the removal.
There's also just killing totems to make the taunt totem as unlikely as possible.
Right.
That's the Jandis?
Oh, okay. Now
Big
this gets
deal.
interesting.
Teacher's pet.
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good.
On the War Mage, make the War Mage the imposter. The illusion. Oh my god. Yes.
I saw War Mage vent. I'm calling a meeting.
For real, is there any reason to put it on the teacher's pet? I think you want the Death Rattle as durable as possible to semi-play around AoE.
Right. I mean, you've seen one Earthquake, right? So you're not even really anticipating that as a likely outcome. Curious to know what's going through his head, because I agree. I do think you probably just end up going for the War Mage here.
And then...
I guess it's... it's also because if you have the War Mage is in the middle, right? So it acts as a blocker for Lurker. Could that be his thinking here? Like, if...
Do you know how
Lurker...
like, a fake minion interacts with Lurker below?
I haven't seen it specifically, but every other time, like with missiles and stuff, it just dies instantly, even if it's in the middle of an interaction.
But if it does die due to Lurker, does the Lurker keep carrying over?
But I think he made the Teacher's Pet the stealth one, right? So the War Mage will always act as a buffer, is my thinking.
Well, we're gonna find out this turn, because che0nsu has to go for Lurker below here.
That was so
You're
sick.
Right.
That was so clever.
It wasn't the imposter. I'm the third imposter. I called it on the wrong. Yeah, that was insane.
Like, he nodded his head as well. You know that's what he was thinking there. That was so smart.
That's largely rewarded as well.
Massively.
Able to push lethal damage.
Surrender's so good at Hearthstone, man. Like, we're sitting there just like, oh, Teacher's Pet has to be the one that you keep as the big one, right? You don't want that to die. You want the Death Rattle to be as durable as possible. And he's there thinking in 5 dimensions all at once. What a guy. I think that was such a cool way for things to end.
Looking at it again, the fact that the Teacher's Pet had Taunt and the War Mage did not makes everything, you know, able for Surrender to plot out what is the ideal positioning for the Lurker below. If they both have Taunt, doesn't matter, because che0nsu has, you know, initiative on where he wants to target. But if Surrender is able to put this stopper right in the middle of the board and make sure that no matter which direction the Lurker below comes from, he's able to maintain enough damage for lethal, even with the Infiltrator Lillian hitting the worst target there. That was so clean and so impressive. I thought at the beginning there, this might finally be a way for Shaman to get the win because che0nsu had put together enough damage, enough healing, and quite a few weapon removals in the early game, but still turn after turn without enough card draw. And with stellar play from Surrender, he now is just one game away from taking the series.
A single game away. And we were saying at the start that, like, Demon Hunter's got some weapons in there, and it does a lot of damage. Maybe che0nsu can out-heal that. That didn't work. Okay, the Weapon Rogue, again, it's aggressive, but it's still got the weapons. Still a very aggressive deck. Maybe this anti-aggro build can take the win. Surrender got the win against that. And now with just the Mage left here, this relies not on weapons, doesn't even really necessarily rely on damage to face all that much. It's more of a board control deck in the mid game. I think that che0nsu is in big trouble now, especially with the level that Surrender has been playing at.
I have to agree. When you asked me to rank at the beginning of the series which deck che0nsu should be most afraid of, I was saying probably the Mage because it can generate the most additional value and damage compared to the rest of the decks that, these slow control decks that have the healing probably can't estimate just how much healing they need to completely outlast the Mage. But che0nsu is going to start off with his Warrior deck, which has the most teeth out of everything else in the lineup because it does run quite a few weapons of its own, and it has Rattlegore in there.
Yeah, has the most teeth and also has the most blades as hands in the deck with both Blade Fist and Rattlegore. Unable to use chopsticks, you'd imagine, with those, but still very, very good at attacking your opponent in the face. Which, like you said, has got to be the game plan here. I think that generally with these, every time I've faced up against a Fatigue or Control Warrior without a bomb package as Mage, I have felt very, very comfortable. It's really the bombs that get you against Warrior as Mage. Outside of that, as long as you're playing correctly and playing for enough value, on average, I think you can very much expect to get more than enough value to outlast the Control Warrior.
Sorry, I just noticed che0nsu's shirt. Just a fat smiley face on there. I love it. He had the hat the other week, and now he is emoting them in real life, if not in game itself.
He's got that drippy drip. He's looking pretty fly, gotta say.
And you mentioned as long as you're playing the Mage correctly, then the win condition is still intact. And correctly here, I have to assume, doesn't mean that you're trying to match the Warrior in Fatigue and, delay your card draw, because Warrior still just wins off of Elysiana if you go that route. So I'd have to imagine it's trying to maintain the perfect balance of threats on board each turn and enough generated value to follow up.
Yeah, it's a constant dance with Tempo Mage because not playing your cards out doesn't necessarily mean that you are playing for value, because every card that sits in your hand is another card that Evocation doesn't give you. It's another card that Mana Cyclone doesn't give you, which is potentially losing value. So it really is about finding that middle ground between playing out your cards and holding them back. I think with this hand in particular, you're definitely looking to hold on to the Sorcerer's Apprentice because with this deck, you have... with the Warrior, Corsair Cache has been played. It's very likely that the Sorcerer's Apprentice would just die on the following turn.
che0nsu going to play out the early games very much as a Control Warrior would. The card that I feel does not belong in this hand is, at first glance, Bloodsworn Mercenary, but it does have its utility later on in the game, whether you want to use it to copy Armorsmith like the old way with Risky Skipper, or if you even want to go on the offensive and try and copy Rattlegores, or be an unexpected way for Mage to
Be very powerful, but the main thing here is that Surrender's hand is really starting to shape up. I was talking about value, and this is it. Apprentice plus Cyclone. A lot of the time it's too slow. A lot of players have been cutting Cyclone or not using it with the Apprentice. But I think in this matchup in particular, I want any chance I can get to generate Power of Creation, Deep Freeze, Puzzle Box, Conjurer's Calling, all the big boys that get you extra value.
And it looks like this is as good a turn as any to start going in. As additional Solarian Prime discovered is huge. Frostbolt, that can protect the Apprentice potentially this turn.
I also really like that Surrender did not play the Lab Partner first. That's not a misordering because he wanted a target for these Ray of Frosts.
Right.
It's just very, very clean play so far.
Absolutely perfect. And I don't think he'll be overdrawing with the amount of spells played. That is backbreaking for che0nsu. I was gonna say the only downside of going for the pop-off this turn is that che0nsu has the live wire lines showing, so you're giving up your apprentice, but with the Frostbolt generated, that's absolutely insane.
Evocation found as well. A whole bunch of the value 1 cost spells there. Mana Giant as well can be played on this turn.
That's surrender. Calm down, man. This turn was perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you're arguably walking into overcommittal with that play because obviously Brawl can come down. But I think, to be perfectly honest, if your opponent brawls this board, like, what are they doing against the rest of your threats that you will have?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, before the Frostbolt and the Mana Giant came down, this was just, okay, you can live wire lines down my apprentice, I can carry on and I'm happy. This is just saying, now you require a brawl to get rid through this, and Surrender can still carry on with the game plan that he had before he got the extra stuff.
Half the time he's extremely happy as well, and this is the quarter of the time that he's very capital D.
Oof. I'd go so far as to say this is an equals capital D for Surrender. He's just that far ahead. che0nsu was talking big on Twitter about how this lineup was the nuts. I'm sure he was expecting to run into more bomb warriors than he actually did, but my gosh, what a beating.
Yep. Come his matchup against Tyler, it's obviously going to be a very different story for che0nsu when the bomb warrior is there for him to try and prey on. But for now, this is the goods that Surrender has. Just an absolute beatdown.
He can even play Spellbender to sort of play around Shield Slam, although at this point Shield Slam is less scary than potentially Blade Storm, because che0nsu doesn't have any armor to begin with.
Like, I don't even want Font of Power here. I want missiles. That can go face. That's just 4 damage on this turn with Astromancer.
I like the missiles, but I feel like the play is still gonna be Solarian Spellbender.
Whoa. Okay. Fair enough.
That's brutal. The
Oh,
Spellbender. I mean, he does get to put together enough armor.
Right.
But the Spellbender is just GG.
Oh, that's so sick. What a way to end this. Yep. Kargath, too expensive. Quartermaster, 8 armor. Perfect. What a beautiful clear on this turn.
If only.
Look at Surrender's face there. I'm telling you, he's cold-blooded.
He's like, you fell right into my trap. I forgot which card says that.
That's ambush. He's just straight up ambusher right here.
Okay, not dead, but very
Not
soon.
dead.
I mean,
Hmm.
Surrender just has to think about what is the 0.0001% chance I lose here, and my instinct is that it involves a risky skipper armor smith turn. But yes, that attacking phase is always 100% happening.
Yeah, it's really just whether you like dig for Conjurer's Calling here specifically is the only thing I'm seeing outside of just develop your 5-drop.
Yeah. I like the develop 5-drop plan.
Time runs out on me.
Just play them out, make room for evocation.
Sure. I mean, you could say you want to hold the 2/1 cost plus the 3 cost spell for Shenvala the next turn.
Sure, yep.
But I feel like Power of Creation the next turn, or even Raz,
Yeah.
they're all game winning.
Okay. Alright, so there's Taunt, there's Removal, leading up to a Kargath. This is not over. Not 100% quite yet.
True. So we're looking at taunting the Quartermaster, coerce the 8/8. Is there any good evolved
Probably-
target?
Yeah, I'm thinking you maybe just Witchy the Quartermaster first to get a 4-drop.
True. And then taunt that instead.
Or you could just throw in a Fairy Dragon. That's also something to consider. Just leave out the Witchy on this turn.
You get to fit in Hero Power maybe rather than Fairy Dragon.
Oh, yep, that's very possible as well. Right. Acceptable.
Okay, if the Kargath can connect, there is hope. But Surrender's curve is showing no signs of stopping. Hello, another Mana Giant?
I mean, that's dealt with. Kargath Prime next turn. That can just clean everything up.
But with Power of Creation, there's chances to put taunts in the way.
I wonder.
So it's very possibly just Power of Creation Giant. You also need to consider the line of Combustion, which clears up most of this board, and then Missiles that can probably do the rest. Like, you can just go, yeah, Allies, Giant, Combustion. That completes the Learn Draconic side quest as well.
Indeed.
Okay.
Unsure what he was going for with the evocation.
Probably just go Arcane Explosion plus Missiles. Or just ping, I suppose. Really doesn't matter here.
Yep.
Oh my god, even Kargath Prime might not be enough. It's so close.
But he has to stay alive on board.
Does have to.
Goes up to 12. Surrender showing 9, 10, 11 with Raz and Ping. Barely alive.
Evocation! There's so many outs. You have to just rip it here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Even if you whiff, you can go Power
9,
of Creation.
10, 11. Like, you literally only need a Primordial Studies, and then you've got Lethal with Raz Ping, assuming you hit a lab partner, that is.
Yep. Or just a masterclass. Surrender taking it slow there towards the end, even though he was 99% favored to win ever since the Sorcerer's Apprentice Mana Giant turn. But that was such a beating. So brutal to beat che0nsu at any point in that series.
Yeah, just an absolute clinic there from Surrender. I mean, to be perfectly honest, only the first game was the one that he made even look difficult, with the close scrape of the Demon Hunter up against the Druid and finding exactly the line of Sociologist Militia. But just so many cool spots. Obviously, the highlight being going for Jandis and then going for the Teacher's Pet, making it the Illusion one, which baited out the the Lurker below. It was such a clean play. And even in that last game, you just knew exactly that he knew what he was looking for at all points along the way. You just don't beat Surrender. It just doesn't happen.
Not with a lineup like this, with no Bomb Warrior. I mean, Surrender was favored from the get-go, and on that first game, I do agree Surrender had to get very lucky towards the end there with the Soul Fragments not being drawn before Militia. But, I mean, in the second game, I don't think Surrender had a back-breaking weapon rogue draw whatsoever, but he put together the exact board state that played around the Lurker below. That's an easy top 5 moment for you there, Derek Surrender, giving you all of your content. You must be a happy chappy, as you call it.
I am indeed. Yeah, and as with the result of that series, it does mean the rich get richer. We see Surrender moving up to 3-0 in Division A, and sadly, che0nsu moving down to 0-3 in Division A, despite having a reasonable start to the Swiss and ending up in Division A overall. He is still looking like the player down at the bottom who is potentially going to be worried about relegation. But after that one, I definitely need a little bit of a break. So we're going to be gone for a little bit longer. Going to play you one of our fantastic new pieces of content that we are making here for Grandmasters for this season. And when we come back, we're going to be going for our 4th match of the day. 2 more yet to come in APAC before we send you to Europe and Americas. We'll be back after this.